Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting us. I'm representing Hudson Analytics. Hudson is a maritime risk assessment and risk management company based in the US, and I'm their European representative. I'll be speaking today about maritime cyber security and cyber risk management. What is important to understand is that cyber threats are one of the biggest global risks as indicated by the World Economic Forum. Is third in likelihood and fifth in potential impact of an attack. And this will only get worse because there's a rising cyber dependency in any industry. And drawing from what we listened in the previous panel, it's obvious now that we will be having much more cyber dependencies based on the digitalization that is coming to the industry. So when we at Hudson started engaging in cyber security about 5 years ago, I can tell you that the level of awareness is more or less what you see in the cartoon right there. But being optimistic about it, the industry is starting to come to grips with this new insidious threat. They start to understand that the problem is there. But I can tell you that we are somewhere there right now. We're understanding the problem, but we cannot offer concrete solutions. And why is that? Well, we have identified three main reasons for that. First of all, there is no apparent 9/11 regarding a ship. There is no wake-up call that indicates that ships are vulnerable. Secondly, there is no mandatory framework. Of course, the IMO has issued a guideline that will be mandatory from January 2021, but there are other regulations out there, as GDPR or the NIS directive, that do have some sort of a cyber element in there. So there is a need to comply with specific regulations. And finally, since, as the previous panel indicated, it's all a matter of compliance, ship owners need to comply with other things before getting to the 2021 deadline. But there are specific researches out there which indicate how big the problem is. The first one shows how important it is to seafarers, how important internet connectivity on board ships is on their selection of where they will work. So one of the first things that they look at is, do I have internet in that company when I join the ship? The second one indicates the level of budget allocation regarding cybersecurity based on company size. And you can see the biggest the company, the biggest the investment. But the thing is that we have a lot of small family-owned ship companies, and they're not investing a lot. And the third one is a great oxymoron, because the first one here is a question of what do you think, how well prepared is the shipping industry? And you can see that there's a positive response. The second one, on the other hand, indicates that in their own companies, when the same people are asked how protected is your company, the answer is opposite. So I don't know how those two relate. So my advice, in trying to answer Apostolos' question, is that we should be able to understand what is the risk, how our company can be affected in order to minimize the risk, and look at cybersecurity as an ROI. And when I am asked, and also in my previous role as a researcher, how vulnerable is the industry and is the industry targeted, I can tell you based on these examples that the industry has been a target for the last 9 years. It started back in 2010, even before that, and I'll only focus on the first example and tell you that a Greek shipping company suffered the most successful pirate attacks in Somalia because pirates paid hackers to gain access into the shipping company's system, and they were able to do that through Wi-Fi light bulbs. The company installed Wi-Fi light bulbs in their offices because they wanted to have the new gadget, and they never changed the username and password. So the hackers were able to gain access to the shipping company's cargo management system and were able to identify the vulnerable targets. So the industry is targeted, and there is a huge problem there. In my previous role at Chatham House, which is a research institute here in London, we conducted the research to try and identify what are the vulnerabilities against cyber attacks, what are the consequences of an attack, and what are the affected fields. And you can see on the graph here, we did this for ports and SIPs, and you can see that for the SIP specifically, the vulnerability is currently, I can say and I can claim that they are low, but as digitalization progresses, the red and the amber will only grow and the green will become smaller. But if you look at the consequences, that's the important thing here. The consequences of a cyber attack can be very big. The numbers that you see here is we followed the system of system analysis and we broke down a SIP, we broke down the elements of a SIP in different subcomponents. So we identified 20 subcomponents for the SIP, and I'll show you in the next slide which one they are. The important thing here to understand that cybersecurity is not only an IT issue. Cybersecurity does not only target our data, but for SIPs specifically, and ports, cyber has a great physical element in it. So if you have a cyber attack, you will have physical consequences. A SIP running aground, a collision, or even loss of life. So it's not only loss of data. And this can be visualized, our research in these two slides. So you can see that we broke down the SIP in 20 different subcomponents, and each of that subcomponent has specific vulnerabilities, consequences, and how it is affected. So what we are saying as Hudson, and what should be understood, is that cybersecurity should be dealt from a risk-based approach, and this is what the IMO is saying. But in order to do that, you need to follow a top-down approach. You need to help and facilitate the managers, the CEO, the COO, the CFO, to understand what the problem is, to understand that it's not only an IT issue, and then try to train all the staff within the company. And it's not only going to affect your balance sheet, but it's also going to cause litigation problems, it's going to cause reputational problems, and it will affect your company both internally and externally with your partners. So a solution to that, and our approach to this, is to look at cybersecurity from a capability maturity approach. This is a risk-based analysis. We can talk about it in person later if you want. But we are taking into consideration all existing regulations, all existing guidelines and best practices, and we have come up with a model that can assess your enterprise cyber risk and offer solutions to that. And our analysis so far has indicated that most of the companies in this curve are up there on the top left. So if you start investing in cybersecurity, you will be able to minimize the risk and come into this blue highlighted area, which is your ROI for cybersecurity. Being there, you will have minimized your technology risk, but also the insurance risk. And I know the speaker after me is from a P&I club. I know he's not going to talk about cybersecurity, but they look at cybersecurity from a very serious perspective, and they're very serious about it. We as Hudson are working closely with Aon on offering cyber products and cyber solutions, and the first step towards that is to conduct a cyber risk assessment at the beginning. But what does the future hold? Well, if you consider what the research there indicates, that over the last 3 years, for different types of SIPs, internet connectivity has doubled or tripled in some cases. You can see that this is becoming into a trend. So we will have more and more digitalized services on board SIPs, and this opens new doors to cyber threats. Also on the port environment, because ports is a major actor in the maritime industry, they have started looking at smart ports, internet connectivity, and more digital solutions. So again, this is another area that needs to be taken into consideration, and this is another area that's affecting the shipping industry. Of course, there's the big word, not Brexit, but blockchain. And blockchain is becoming a major buzzword. A lot of people are talking about blockchain in shipping. We're trying to see what's the value of it. I saw a very interesting tree diagram 2 days ago, and the first question was, do you need blockchain in shipping? And there was only one selection, no. And I can tell you that from what we are seeing, blockchain is a nice to have in the shipping industry, but certainly not a differentiator and not something that will contribute a lot into minimizing costs and increasing productivity. So what is the way forward? What we should do? The previous panel said that it's the flag state responsibility to deal with cybersecurity. And the Danish government, I think about a month ago, issued the first of its kind cybersecurity strategy for the shipping industry. So it engages all Danish flagged ships and all ships sailing within Danish waters. So we know that the IMO is really slow in reacting and implementing regulations, but a way of doing that, it's not only being industry-led, as we have seen from previous examples, but also to look at flag states and how they can regulate that approach. Thank you so much for your time. I'm 1 minute early. So.